Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. R&B and neo-soul icon Maxwell performs live at MGM National Harbor this Saturday and Sunday nights. We spoke about his evolution from Maxwell's urban hang suite to Black Summer's Night, and even the recent phenomenon of fans posting viral videos of his dance moves. Hey, Maxwell. Hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in DC.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be on your show. You know, I love DC. DC's like pretty special for me. It's really nice memories.
Why is that?
Wow. I meit was the first time I played like 5 or 6 Constitution halls, you know?
Yeah.
In my early 20s. It was when I really felt like I made it, you know, when I would go to DC and I'd be there for 2 weeks performing. So, I just want to thank everyone out there. Most of them are probably all grown up and have kids now. So, thanks for coming to the shows, and thanks for playing the music for your children, because they come to the shows too. So, wow, it's like a second wave, you know?
Exactly. That's how it happens, though. You know, we all, folks my age, we all grew up listening to your stuff, and now you get multiple generations that can come on to your shows. So that's great. Well, we should mention that the reason we're talking is you're coming to the MGM National Harbor here on November 12th and 13th. So everybody get your tickets now. What can we expect from the concert? I assume all the greatest hits that we're talking about, that we grew up with, but is there anything new, or future album stuff you're going to drop in there too?
Yeah, we're gonna play the single that we dropped earlier this year, which I just it went to #1, which was amazing to me. And then we're just gonna play the songs that people wanna hear. I'm excited to go and spend some time in DC. There's so much about DC that I love, and obviously, there's the politics part, and but it's the people. There's something about how they welcomed me back in my early days that I always hold close to my heart, and it's always like a pleasure to walk through, and it's such a beautiful city too. The way it's like kind of like a mini version of Paris, but not really, because of everything's so low, and it's not so skyscrapey vibes,
Yeah, there's like a height ordinance where you can't build it anything taller than, I guess, Washington Monument. I think that's for security reasons, I'm sure. But yeah. I think it's designed, in a French way. I believe it is the whole layout of the city. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's dope.
And I'm pretty sure at the National Harbor at MGM, aren't you also going to be sharing the stage? Isn't Alex Isley, daughter of Ernie Isley, Isley brothers, going to be there with you?
Yes. Literally, I've been playing her music, her featured music, her individual music, just nonstop, it's incredible. When they say it's in the genes, they mean it. Her voice is absolutely the most beautiful thing. It's like the only way I can describe it is like if multiple doves were flying in unison in the sky. That's how Alex Isley's voice sounds to me when I hear it. It's beautiful, and for someone to be able to successfully cover Patrice Rushen without pissing me off or anyone off is a monumental feat. So I'm so excited to share the stage with her. I think she's such an amazing musician and artist, and then of course she comes from music royalty, so it's like,
oh yeah,
I'll be on the side of the stage watching, just like everyone's watching her as well. So I can't wait for that introduction, because I haven't had the chance to meet her. I've just been a fan for a while,
Multiple doves flying together in unison. That is the way. Thanks for the beautiful visual for the radio. I love that. You paint a picture. Wait, so if she's multiple doves flying, how would you describe your own music? What would be the animal bird analogy for that?
Oh, I don't know. I always leave it up to the listener to kind of make those decisions. I am so hard on myself about what I could have done and what I probably could have done better in a song or here and there. I never watch myself. I just had to approve some archival footage of some performances that I had done, like when I was in my, early 20s. and then late 30s, and I'd never watched any of it. So I was like, whoa, that was me then. Because I'm just so kind of I'm a little hard on myself about it. And I'd rather just be in the moment and not have anything come off too contrived. So if you see things too much about yourself, then you're not really in your element or in your moment. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how to describe my voice. I hope it's a good description for those who.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm just riffing on your analogy. But yeah, speaking of your, looking back at footage of you and being in the moment, I have to ask you about that awesome viral video. You know it's coming. Dropping low, shaking your knees on the stage. Take me into the mindset. Is that just a spur of the moment stroke of inspiration and you're like, I'm just gonna do it? It doesn't look like it was planned out. You're just having fun.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm born in Brooklyn, right? And my background is from the Caribbean. So my mom's from Haiti, my dad's Puerto Rican. Everyone goes low. That's what it is. From a Southern perspective, you would think of it in a different way. I hear people say that I'm twerking. I hear people saying various things, but the funniest part of it is that I'm unbothered by it. I think it's actually hilarious that people have like created all these different versions and reasons.
Right. Like who knew, it took off.
I did this forever ago and it's not been even a part of the second leg of the show. So I was like, what took y'all so long to come for me? But love to everyone though, for everyone who participated in creating their own version of the video. I don't know there's so many iterations of this.
Yeah.
But the internet is the internet, and God bless it for being what it is.
Keep the videos coming. You can't predict this stuff. It's hilarious what catches on and takes off into a life of its own. All right, well,
you couldn't pay for it. It's literally like the most insane thing. I was like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. But
free
God
advertising.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm selling there, but
you're selling the moves, man. Oh, I love it. Well, you mentioned that. Let's go. You mentioned you're born in Brooklyn. With your parents, and I guess we're talking 1973 Brooklyn here. So I want to know how you got into music in the first place. Was it you received a keyboard from a friend, or what was that initial spark?
Well, yeah, there was. I have to say that the initial spark came from my grandmother. I mean, she, first thing she ever gave me was a Bible, of course. Came from a very religious Christian family. The second was a harmonica, and the third was a radio. And the radio was what really set me off because that's when I heard radio stations and I heard music, and for some reason I was particularly drawn to R&B and soul. Obviously there were so many channels on the dial, but for some reason I just loved the R&B stuff.
What artists were you listening to as a kid?
Oh wow, there's so many.
We're talking like Marvin Gaye, or what are we talking?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean that was always going to be playing, no matter what. But like currently at the time during the like late 70s or even in the 80s, there are people like Anita Baker. There were artists like, New Edition, obviously Janet Jackson at the time, obviously Michael Jackson. My element, I always was drawn to the R&B soul thing. I don't know why, maybe because there was so much emotion and pain and beauty in the voices that sang. And so, that's when I kind of, but I was very, hesitant because, I didn't want to embarrass myself and fail, so I sort of edged myself in to being part of music slowly but surely, because I wasn't being, I didn't have like my mom wasn't taking me to auditions when I was like 15 or 13, like most of my contemporaries. They knew when they were 8, and they were doing talent shows. They were on Star Search and all these types of things. And I would see them on Star Search. Like I saw, Beyonce, on Star Search. I saw Aaliyah on Star Search. So for me, I got into it a lot later than most people do, but I really felt like I was gonna really be a songwriter initially, and that's kind of how I worked it. And then Mitchell Cohen being that someone, an amazing writer, amazing A&R music, he said, we want to sign you, and I was like, oh no, it's happening. So when they decided that, I had to think about it because I was very scared, because fame is very crazy. You can you can start out one way and end up another way, but I just couldn't live with the what if. So I just, I went with it, and we are here today.
Absolutely. And when you're talking about, getting signed and oh, it's happening. This is I guess it's Columbia Records in 94.
Yeah,
Take me into putting together that breakthrough album we all remember, Maxwell's Urban Hang Suite. I guess that released in 96.
yeah.
But man, all your fans will know Ascension, Don't Ever Wonder, and something something, and basically that whole album at this point, it's like a legendary album now for the genre. But talk about, do you any good memories of actually being in the studio? Tell us where it was recorded, or where you were and how you wrote those hits. I want to know the goods on Maxwell's Urban Hang Suite.
Okay, I got you. I mean, I have to kind of I have to really say that, it was the fellowship of the people that got to meet along the ride. Obviously Hot David, eventually Stuart Matthewman, Etal Shore, Gene Lake on drums, Wawa Watson, Peter Mokrin, who was from Chicago, who did some of the mixing and some of the co-producing kind of stuff, because they didn't trust that I could produce myself. So initially that's kind of how it started. But we were just making a record, and the great thing about Mitchell Cohen is that he said you don't have to make an R&B record, you don't have to make a record just make the record you want to make. And that's why it was so, I think, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I think that's why it was so unique to what it was, because we weren't restricted in any way to focus on like what would get on radio, because if I was making a record at that time, what was on radio was completely different from what Urban Hang Suite was.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to Mitchell, and also to the staff at Columbia at the time. It took him a while to understand what they were going to do with this album. I don't think they really understood that there wasn't an audience for it, because it's a business. Usually it's a business for a lot of people, and they just do the business thing. And this was a creative experience that was like in their face, and they had to figure out what to do with something that was just purely creative. We had no agenda. We had no radio agenda. We had no we just had no agenda. It was like, what is the thing that we like the most about all the music that we've grown up with? Let's make a record that can kind of be that way. And so it sat on the shelf for about, a year. I watched all these people being released. The incredible, legendary D'Angelo was released.
Brown Sugar was 95, right? And Erica Baduizm was 97. So I guess yours was sort of right in between. The trio of those are like the neo soul, the breakthrough.
Yeah, it's for me to be associated with those two incredible artists is like at the time I had no idea what the magnitude of that would be, but now with my 49-year-old mind and spirit, or maybe my spirit's a little bit older than that, but
you're old soul.
But yeah, I mean, but I was on someone's shelf, just they didn't know what to do. We were waiting for, I guess, staff or people to come in to sort of like market this, but I don't think they really understood that they didn't really need to market this album. Really, they just needed to just let people hear it. And thankfully, the more people heard it, the word got around, and it was discovered mainly by people. It was a discovered record, and the label had to kind of catch up with like the discovery of the audience. And that was like that's the best part of that album. And I think my career in general is that it was the people, not the establishment, that made it happen.
Yeah.
It took the establishment to market it and obviously make the CDs at the time when we had CDs and records and all that, but it was the people that demanded and wanted it. So it was very exciting to see that that's what made it work and come together. So thank you to the people.
Thank you to the people. Did it blow your mind when people are now, they're at that point now they're saying you're like the next Prince or Marvin Gaye, or you know what I mean? Like that's got to be mind blowing.
Oh yeah, because I knew I wasn't. I knew that was just all just I guess people's ways of categorizing situations so that readers could understand something, or so that papers could get sold, or whatever it was.
Right.
um I knew that, obviously, that I was just an apprentice of sorts at that point in time in my life. But what was great for me was the fact that I got to quietly make this record without any pressure from the world. It takes you your whole life to write your first album, and then everyone wants another one in you know 6 months after you're done with the last release of your single.
Yeah.
And because I don't have writing camps, and it's not like there's like a bunch of people submitting songs to me constantly, we are kind of like our own, and it's kind of like a niche sort of small group of people that we just work together all the time. So it's very difficult sometimes to kind of keep up with what people want, because we're not really, we're not getting all these submitted songs, that are literally, okay, that person has a #1 hit and that writer's sending you a song. So, it can be a bit interesting for me. But I didn't get into this to be a pop star. I got into this to be a creative person, to be a writer, to be able to tell a story, to be able to create a mood musically. I wasn't interested in the pop aspect or the success of selling as many records and being known by as many people as possible. That was not my agenda. And it was very, not difficult, but it was hard for Columbia, a huge label like that, that's built to create those types of monsters. Or I wouldn't say monsters in a bad way, but that's what they're built to do, to maximize you to the point of like absolute, it's to the heights of who you could possibly be.
Yeah.
Everyone should know who you are. And I wasn't really directing my creativity towards that. I didn't want that to be what it was, because like, I love people like Sade, and obviously she's a huge star, without even trying really. But there's something about her music that is so personal to who she is as a soul, and it's not a part of a manufactured engine, or business, and so to speak. So I was lucky. I was lucky to be able to sort of like have that kind of creative freedom, because most artists start doing things as they're told, and then when they become successful, then they grab the reins. I was allowed to have the reins, from day one. So that was really a blessing and a curse, but it was a
Yeah.
blessing.
Well, you said, you have your that the old saying, you have your whole life to write that first one, and then you got to boom, turn around and crank it out the next one in like 6 months or whatever. So, what was it like putting together Embria, and then now after that, you had to put them out pretty quickly over a couple years there. But yeah, I mean, how did you see yourself evolving from that? And I mean, they picked that Matrimony, maybe. Yeah, there's so many we could talk about on those albums. But yeah, just how do you think that evolved after Urban Hang Suite? I mean, did you see yourself stretching out? Did you see yourself growing in your own, look in the mirror and you're proud of it kind of a way?
Well, here's the thing. So it's a really good question, by the way. So
Not
the
really, but
no, it is, because, and I'll tell you why. It's at first of all, I had the unplugged that happened, and then a very special song called "This Woman's Work," which was always around, which I was always sitting around, and it was always in the back of my mind, that this Kate Bush record is just the most amazingly beautiful record I've ever heard. And so when you do an unplugged, there's like, okay, there's an opportunity to do one cover or two covers. We ended up doing Trent Reznor's "Closer," and making it like a church type of soulful thing. And then of course the incredible Kate Bush, who I've been a fan of. Like, I know more than just that song. I mean, I just think she's one of the most rarest creative forces that's ever made music. She's just a, there's nothing like that. It only comes once, and it's just so special. So I had requested to do that song. Everyone wanted me to do like a Marvin Gaye cover or a Sam Cooke cover or something that was obvious to whatever the constraints of they thought that I was going to be or whatever people were comparing me to. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great to write a song that was written by a woman about a female experience that a man could never understand, and to sort of, obviously, arrange it and record it in a way that would hopefully make it more palatable to people who looked like me, and that was a special thing to sing that live for the first time at BAM, Brooklyn Academy of Music in Brooklyn, New York, in front of an audience that had no phones by that time, which is the thing about that song. It's like when you're doing that song, you're not trying to perform it to a phone or to a person holding a phone. You're trying to perform it to a person so that it goes into their heart,
Right.
And so, so that happened. And then, of course, I wanted to sort of completely, switch gears and do something completely. I would feel like I thought it was ambitious, but I think people, on the success of Urban Hang Suite, they were just, okay, well, even though they didn't really understand it in the beginning, and then all of a sudden it became a thing that they understood, now they wanted me to sort of stick to this particular script of stay in the zone. You got it. Everyone's on your side. Everyone likes this thing that you're doing. And then I went completely more trance, more Bjork-like, more, I don't know who else to describe at the time that made certain kinds of music, but I wanted to just go in a different direction. Some of the critics were not kind, and that's fine.
Screw them.
I don't make records for critics. I don't make records for people. I make records because I make records.
Yeah.
But the beauty of Embria is 20 years after its release, it yielded a whole new subgenre that I hear now in current R&B, which I'm just so happy. Sometimes you can be, I guess, a little bit too ahead of your time. But it gave me that latitude to then go back into now and to show people, here's Lifetime, here's Get to Know You, and here's Symptom Unknown, and here's obviously the recorded version of this woman's work, which I did primarily for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, because a young girl who sadly passed soon after I met her, she was 9 years old, and so the proceeds for most of that, for the recorded version, went primarily to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So I just wanted people to know more than anything that this wasn't some dog and pony show, that I'm serious about being a creative person. And whether you like what I'm doing or not, I hope you can be patient with me with that process of my own personal evolution as an artist. And I think that's what's happened. And I'm grateful for that. I know many people don't get these chances. There's so many people who were signed in 1994 and released records in 1996 that they're not even talking to you, or they don't have records or any kind of options like the way that I have. So I'm just grateful for it. It was a great risk.
Well, I'm glad everyone was patient with you. You were ahead of your time. What is it? What's the line in remember in Back to the Future? He's like, I guess you're not ready for this, but your kids are gonna love it. And you were ahead of the game with Embria now. By the way, tell me, I didn't even mean that segue, but tell me about your movie soundtrack stuff, because you did Fortunate for Life, which, by the way, my wife and I just watched the other day, and it's still hilarious with Martin Lawrence. God, at the brothel, it gets me every time. With Let's Not Play the Game for the Best Man. So like, as late 90s, early 2000s, we're starting to watch some of these, big mainstream movies. We're hearing Maxwell's music along the way, but how fun was it to do, Fortunate for Life and Let's Not Play the Game for Best Man?
It was great. First it's funny because my introduction to the actual film world with my music was with Love Jones. I did
yeah.
mix of something called Mellow Smooth, and it was like a slower version of something, this is like all happening during the time that my album is on the shelf. I have nothing to do. And I'm like, well, let me just make some new versions of these songs that I've already recorded that are not being released right now. And so when the album came out, they were like, hey, we need something for this amazing new movie called Love Jones, starring, of course, Trey Lorenz and Nia Long and this incredible story of Black love in a very normal way. Like and then they put it on the soundtrack, and of course that movie had Dion Farris, the song Hopeless. It also had The Sweetest Thing I've Ever Known by Lauryn Hill. I mean, it just would go down in history as like a killer, all killer, no filler soundtrack. And so I think that's how all these other soundtracks came towards me. And so as all that was happening, I was now was in my mind already. I had the songs, but music was changing. I mean, it was changing drastically. It was moving away from the love thing and the because I feel like the neo soul experience was quite a renaissance moment for R&B. Don't you feel? Is it just me?
Oh yeah.
And I feel like after that experience, after that renaissance in music, it became very, very hip hop, and I think Lauryn Hill obviously managed to keep that purity of soul, and of course balance the hip hop elements that were about to really take over with artists obviously like Jay-Z and artists like 50 Cent and Eminem, and then you had the pop element of Britney Spears. So that moment was such a brief moment where soul music was starting to took center stage pretty much. And so I just had to sort of like pull away a bit after now and wait for an incredible artist named Amy Winehouse to be released.
And everything changed after that, right?
And when I heard that album, I was like, I think I could start making music again. I think there's an audience that is interested in topics that don't have to do with like misogynistic violence and
right.
and not that I'm passing judgment. Everyone has the right to create and to paint the picture that they feel that best suits their story.
Right, but it was time to move on from that. Let's evolve as a species. Let's write about some other stuff, is what you're saying.
I mean, look, what was selling was what was selling. I was happy. I got a break from the celebrity situation that was engulfing my life a little bit. And I got to sort of like take a deep dive into myself and come up with, obviously Black Summer's Night, which, would bring about Pretty Wings and Bad Habits and Fistful of Tears. And
that won you 2 Grammys, right? R&B album and R&B performance, right?
Yeah. That was like actually after the 16th nomination. That was when I finally
16 times the charm.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because it's interesting. I don't make the music for the accolades, and I know someone will probably say, yeah, whatever, but I'm not a metrics person. I'm not like, there's, the Velvet Underground sold what, 12,000 records or something, I don't know, but then it created David Bowie, and it created like all these different artists who would go on to change the landscape of music. So for me, the success is in the creation of the work. It's not in the how many streams am I getting or how many clicks am I getting. And
you can't put a number on that stuff. It's all about the creation and the influence on other artists.
That's kind of the lane that I'm in. But obviously, music is a business and people are counting coins sometimes, and I'm just grateful that here and there I get a couple of things that just like go fly out the gate like crazy. Like I wrote Pretty Wings, because I was in a relationship at the time, and it had gone a certain way, and I had a lot to do with why it didn't go the right way. And I just wanted to honestly speak about my misstep in a song, and that song ended up sort of like putting me back on the map in a very special way. And I didn't have to have an afro. I didn't have to have all the quote unquote things that people thought were the reasons why my success was happening initially. People were like, it's about his look, or it's about this. It's very funny how and I'm a 20 something year old person, very sensitive obviously at the time, and new to this world of celebrity, and you're constantly being because people are competitive, they want to win, they want to be number one, and you're trying to contribute and they're trying to compete, and it's a different mindset completely. And so I just sort of decided to say, okay, let me just like keep contributing, and I'll let them all compete with each other, and I'll just contribute as much as I can. So that's kind of how it all like came together. And I'm just happy that people I think coming from that perspective is why I don't necessarily need an album to go on the road, really. I don't necessarily need a song out. I've like had 4 years at times where there was no music out, and there was a completely full theater or amphitheater or arena or whatever it was that I was at, and that's an amazing thing to have. That's like a U2 type thing to have. And I think you know what I mean by that, because before U2 was the biggest band at the time, when they were the hugest band, and they're still big in my mind, they were selling stadiums, they were selling arenas, and radio had no idea about who they were. And so that brings me back to the beauty of like having the people make the decisions. I mean, we need the establishment, of course, and we're grateful for the establishment, but it's the people that I care about the most. And they're the ones that kind of stick around and believe in you when 12 executives have been fired from a position that, that you needed them to be in so that they could be invested in you. So I'm grateful for that more than anything.
Executives come and go. The suits change, but the people and the people that love your music, they're forever with you on the ride, and that's what matters. Just to sort of round it out, my listeners will kill me if we don't mention the other Black Summer's Night album, because I guess, your fourth album was all caps Black, and then the fifth album was the all caps was the Summers part, just so our listeners know. It's similar names, but different albums.
You know your stuff, Jason. Wow.
You got to do a little research. I'm just, dude, don't give me too much credit, man. I'm just talking about album titles. But tell me about the Lake by the Ocean, though. How'd you come up with that? Because that won you an R&B Grammy, but best R&B song. But tell me about, and by the way, that brings us full circle to the viral video, because I think that's what you were performing when you're shaking them knees. But
yes. Wow, you got a definite reaction from me from that. Yeah, it's so funny because I saw something that Questlove posted, which was so funny because he and I love him. We're great friends. I love the movie that he put out, The Summer of Soul. Absolutely genius work.
Oh my God, so good.
So good. And then he posted this thing, and I think this girl wrote like, there is no Maxwell song that calls for this. And the irony of that is that I worked with this guy on a remix for Lake by the Ocean called, his name is Michael Brunn. He's already won, I think, maybe 2 or 3 Grammys with J Balvin. He's from Haiti. His mother's from Guyana. But he's full-blown Haiti in every sense of the word. He was born there. And I met him when he was like 20 something. He was doing EDM records, and then he kind of moved into more like sort of like a soca, tropical, more island feel to his music. And so he did a remix of Lake by the Ocean, and we perform that remix. Usually, sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. And that's where all that comes from. So when I saw the meme where there's not a song that calls for this, it was like, I guess that girl she never heard that song. Now that song is that. Now that song's doing pretty well because it's so weird. It's so funny. Look, at the end of the day, I was locked up for 2 years, just like everyone else.
Yep.
I was able to come out on tour and I was feeling a little hyped up. And so that's kind of what happened. And that's why you have your viral video. You have a man that was trapped in a cage who has been released, and he's in front of an audience and he's just happy that people have come. And that's kind of what, I guess sort of imbued the spirit of what you probably saw in the viral video.
I love it. He was trapped in a cage for a quarantine for years, and now he's out, baby, and he's performing at MGM National Harbor with Alex Isley, by the way.
Yes.
It's called the Night Tour. It's going to be November 12th and 13th at MGM National Harbor, so everyone get your tickets. Maxwell, this was a blast. I could freaking sit and talk to you all day, but Zoom isn't going to allow it. But thanks so much. This was so much fun getting to hear, all the backstory of all this stuff.
Absolutely. Jason, thank you so much for having me on your show. And, I look forward to getting in, I look forward to getting over there, and I hope everyone, has a good time. And I can't wait to see Alex Isley again. I described her as I described her. Her voice is like a multitude of doves flying in unison in the sky. She's amazing. Please check her out. As much as you might know about me, I've had the blessing, to have special guests like Jasmine Sullivan, Alicia Keys. Oh my God. You know what I mean? I feel like, if I got in the door, I always should let someone, I should leave the door open for someone else to get in. And this is a great opportunity. And she's definitely one of those artists. So please check, the heir apparent to the Isley dynasty, Alex Isley.
You love the bird analogies, doves flying, pretty wings, setting people free, letting them fly out on stage. You love the analogy. It's great. It's great.
I'm an air and water type of person.
I love it. Well, thanks so much. Air and water mixed with my coffee. It was great.
And now I'm going to make my own coffee now. Thanks
so
much, Jason.
Happy brewing. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.
Explain your DNA on 10 cases, man.
You're inside the police interrogation room with the alleged Potomac River rapist.
I'm not guilty on any of this stuff.
So calm, so reasonable. Could this be the man who terrorized women for 9 years before murdering a brilliant scientist 2 decades ago? Experience one of the most fascinating true crime podcasts available. Join crime reporter Paul Wagner for Unknown Subject, Season 3 of WTOP's American Nightmare series. Search American Nightmare Podcast on all podcast platforms.
I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play. Listen local with Podcast DC.